All right, this is an introduction video to repairs I'm doing on my hot water heater and my coach floor heater in my 2001 Winnebago Adventure 35U. This is an incomplete video, and this video has the whole thing taken apart, but I haven't put it all back together yet because I'm ordering parts. It is 45 minutes long at this point. Wanted to give you that heads up. And I do think if you are even considering tackling the water heater, but most especially the floor heater, the coach floor heater, you need to watch this video because this is a very difficult task, and I didn't discover how difficult it would be until I got into it. So even though this is a 45-minute video, and I think it'll be over an hour when I add the completion part, I do recommend that people watch the entire video. And I want to apologize up front because it's some parts in the video it's not exactly sequential in the right order, and that is because I got so frustrated during the process it became impossible to videotape because I needed both hands to do the work. And so I ended up doing a reenactment in some parts just to show you guys what I had to do, but I wasn't videotaping during the process, and that led to some sequential issues. So I just wanted to give everyone a heads up about that, but I do think this is a very helpful video on, in particular, the coach heater repair. And I'm going to mention now, because all coaches don't have this, but my coach has a feature called Motoraide by Winnebago. And that, I didn't know this until after I got into the project, which is part of the reason it was so difficult. But Motoraide is where they direct engine coolant back to the heater core and the hot water heater in order to warm it up while you are driving down the road. And that feature added a tremendous amount of difficulty to the job. Okay, this is my 2001 Winnebago Adventure 35U, and what I'm trying to do is replace the blower motor for the coach heater. I'll show you the vent that blows heat right on the floor next to the passenger. I've already taken off the grill. Grill's right there. You can barely get an arm down in there, but that's not important. But that's where the heat comes from. And so, digging around, I figured out that it is behind the water heater. That being the water heater right there. And I'm going into this storage compartment. I'm going to show you what I'm going to try to do, because I've read that you've got to pull the water heater, but I don't want to do that. That's a big project. So right there is the heat unit, and I already opened up this panel to it. It is right behind the water heater assembly. And if you look in there, you can see the blower motor that I'm trying to replace. It's right there. Well, this whole assembly can come out sideways if, I think it can at least. There's already one black screw that was right there that I removed. But if you look in the very back, there's another black screw. And I think if I can get that screw out, this entire assembly will come slide this way. Now, it's not designed, I think it's meant for you to have to pull the water heater assembly right here in front of it. But I'm gonna try to get around that. I wanted to document it before I actually did it, so you guys could see what I'm talking about. I've already pulled out the front black screw I've pulled, and then another black screw that wasn't on the base, but was on this panel here. But you can see I've already pulled that screw right there, and now I'm gonna go for that one. And the only way to get at it is gonna be to reach my hand all the way back there. And I've got two different Phillips I'm gonna try. I got a long and a short. I do know it's a nice heavy Phillips head, so you don't want a narrow head, you want a thick one. I don't know what that is called, but I got one of the bolt screws out here, and I made sure that it's a nice snug fit on this Phillips head, because you're gonna need it to be a good fit in order to get this done. So I'm not gonna videotape my attempt, but let's see if I can't get it loose. But also, I found water behind the hot water heater. It's dark, but it's down there. There's a puddle of water. So I need to pull the hot water heater anyhow. Unfortunately, it's not a big leak like I can go camping. It's all working, but I constantly have water dripping down here, which is gonna rust out the bottom of the camper, so I don't wanna leave it that way. So, step one, I came back here to the propane tank, and you turn it clockwise. This valve here, make sure it's turned off completely. Step two, because I didn't want to have all that natural gas leaking out when I disconnected the primary gas line here, I wanted to get it out anyhow. So I came into the kitchen. Step two is I came to the stovetop here and I started it. I've already done it, but basically I just started my first burner, and it burned for about 10-15 seconds, and slowly the flame went away. So I got rid of all the gas pressure in the lines. Now I'm free to take out the hot water heater. Mine is a 10-gallon Suburban. So I'm gonna take it out, try to see where the water leak is. I've already disconnected the gas line here, took out this grommet. The line should just slide back when I pulled the whole water heater forward. And then there's some more wires, I think, up here. There's probably a connection that I will expose, or I can just unplug the whole thing from the system. And now I'm taking out the screws around the perimeter here. Oh, and I almost forgot. Drain all the water out of it. So I'm gonna pull this plug down here, open up the overflow valve up here so it can breathe and get all the water out of the hot water heater. So here I've already loosened this. Right now this valve is still closed, so I can control the flow. So I open this up and it gurgles out slowly. Now I'll open the air vent and it'll come out quickly. And we'll let this thing drain. Okay, at this point I've removed all the screws, I've drained the water, and when I went to pull it out, it wouldn't come out, and I discovered that there was double-sided sticky sealant like rubber tape around the entire perimeter of it. And of course, it's a 21-year-old RV, and so that tape is quite sealed up. So at this point, I had no choice but to get this small pry bar, and basically what I did, I didn't pry much yet because I didn't want to damage anything. I just set it here and I hammered it in, and you can see it's a wedge. So I hammered it in, which pulled the edge away all the way around, and now I'm just going to start to work on it. But basically you're going to have to do that to get this thing out, and I obviously need both hands to do it, so I can't videotape the process. But I wanted you to know it doesn't come out all that easily. You're going to have to break that seal around the unit. The next thing it tells me to do is to remove the door itself. So I'm going to do that, and there is a small bolt here and a small bolt here that I'm going to remove. I already took out these corner reinforcements. Go here and here. So I took that out. I've taken out all my bolts and I have them off to the side. But I'm gonna get that door out of the way now. The hinges are held in place. I don't know if you can see this, but it's just a clip. There's a clip over the bracket. You see the clip is open on this end and it's open towards the back. So this thing basically just pops into place, and then there's one screw which is just to hold this one clip down, like my finger is pushing down. So these clips don't come off. You just now pop the latch out of it. WD-40. You know what? Almost got it out. Do the same thing on this side. All right, I got the door off. These are the hinges. Here's one hinge. Looks like it went like this. That's the way the hinge had been on there, pushed under the clips. And anyhow, so I did that on both sides, got the door off. Okay, at this point on another video, I saw there was an access plate under the water heater. So you go under the RV. So I suggest you go under there and see if there's any possible fasteners holding your water heater from the bottom, or an access plate so that you can see what's going on under the water heater. I don't have that. I went under there and looked. It's a solidly composed box, no access points. So there's no need to show that, but I did look for that. Just make sure there's nothing on the underside. All right, be prepared for a bit of a challenge to get this thing out. The rubber sealant that's around it is quite effective, and I have been prying lightly all the way around with this pry bar. And you will bend this front lip, but I don't think that's a problem, especially if you're going to toss it and replace it. I'm not sure what I'm doing yet. You might be able to replace just the tank, but I think probably at this juncture, 20 years old, I'll probably buy a new one, which I've seen anywhere from $450 to $650. And I think it's just worth it at this juncture, so I don't have to do this again probably during my ownership of the RV. But at any rate, I'm trying not to destroy it, but expect that it's going to take a while. So now I'm going to use this knife to try to further cut the seal that I've already somewhat broken around the edge, but I'm going to try to cut it better. All right, at this point, I have definitely gotten it loose because I can manipulate it. You see, I can wiggle it by hand. It's still stuck towards the top because that's very hard to get at. Although I did help break it loose at the top. So you want to definitely work on it all the way around on all four sides. But the top remains the hardest to get at. But I think it's loose enough. So what I have done is I have fastened 2 vice grips to the top of the water heater in order to provide me a place to grab to pull forward on the water heater. So I'm going to have to do this off camera, but I'm going to work on pulling it forward now. Okay, what I recommend you do is pull on one corner at a time with your vice grips. So I started over here and I pulled until I saw the remaining glue let go on the top. Then I came over here And they did the same thing until I saw the remaining glue release on the top. So now I know it's released on all 4 sides. I'm going to work on pulling the whole thing out. Now I pulled it out a couple of inches, but on my model, you have to disconnect the water lines in the back of the water heater. There's no easy way to do that because I do not have an access panel from underneath. So for me, I'm gonna have to pause now and crawl into this storage unit and look behind this bulkhead here. And I'll show you with video in a minute, but basically I'm gonna have to reach in back there and disconnect my water lines from the water heater. The other thing I always like to do is keep all my parts in plastic bags. So I've got all my pieces down here in a Ziploc plastic bag. So here I am looking in the back, and that's the back of my water heater, and you can see I've got the top line right there, and the bottom line right there. And not sure. Oh, you know what? I think these black pipes, I'm guessing, but I'm thinking those are hot engine water. Probably just to keep the tank tepid warm when you're driving through sub-zero weather, so your hot water tank perhaps won't freeze. But there's definitely some hose connections there, and they are there's the fitting where they're connected. That's going to be a bit of a challenge. So I think for now my next step is going to be to disconnect these PEX lines here and here. Okay, I might as well share this. I think I just found my leak, because when I was barely tugging on this PEX line to remove it, it immediately snapped right there at the L bracket where it went into the bottom of the water heater, which tells me there was already a hairline crack there, and that is where my leak is. So what I may do at this point is replace that, pressurize the thing, and see if I'm getting any more leaking. Except there is the front, the second project, which is the floor coach heater, which I've got to replace the blower that's back in there. I may go ahead and pull this water heater just to make that whole thing easier to achieve. Okay, at this point, I have disconnected the upper line, the brass piece from the back of the water heater. So the only thing holding me back right now are these black lines. Okay, I had some trouble pulling it forward, and then I realized my gas line is getting caught here. So make sure you clear the gas line and let it come out of the frame of the water heater. All right, so now I've gotten the water heater out this far, and here's the electrical connector I expected to find. Here's the wire coming off the top of the water heater. Here's the electrical connector. I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect that and keep pulling the water heater forward. All right, I've kind of reached, I might be able to pull the water heater forward a little more, but I'm getting some resistance from those black hoses. So what I'm gonna do right now, before I just up and remove them, I need to go look at the Winnebago diagrams and figure out what they are, because if they're part of the engine cooling system, then I won't be able to drive the vehicle after I disconnect them. So I'm gonna go figure out where they come from. So that right there is as far as you're gonna get this water heater out if you don't disconnect those engine coolant lines on the back. So I'm gonna push it back into the RV and then crawl into this space here and disconnect those lines. Have no choice. That's what I have to do. I've loosened the clamps to those Motoraide water heaters, and they won't, I can't get the pipes off. So I have to change my plan of attack, because I actually felt one of the pipes, and I just don't think it's going to come off, at least not easily. So what I'm going to try to do now at this point is there's these straps that were holding the styrofoam insulation to the water heater. You know, these things, it's like a packing strap. I'm removing it and see if I can't separate whatever wraps the tank from the water heater. Okay, in this narrow cramped space, I cannot get these black coolant lines to come off of the water heater. I've disconnected the metal strap, as you can see there. It doesn't matter, I can't get it loose. So my only option, I'm gonna cut these lines, and then when I'm gonna put an extension to the pipe on there with a coupling, and I'm gonna make it to where in the future this water heater can be pulled all the way out. There'll be plenty of excess line to do that. I don't have any other choice. And I think when I cut these lines, coolant is going to leak, but hopefully not much. Engine coolant, that is. But I don't see any other way to practically do this, and I think it's going to end up a better deal for me when I reinstall it, because I'll be thinking about the future and making it easier to manage down the road if anyone needs to. So I'm going to cut those lines. And so I cut the line, and yes, it is green engine coolant. And you can see it right there. When I flex the line where I did my cut, there it is, green engine coolant coming out. All right, so I've cut those lines, and so you can see them hanging there, the two black lines. And you can see there's the stub of the line there that I removed, and there's the rest of the line down there that I removed. So now the water heater should be pretty much ready to come straight out. So here you see I built up a platform to hold the water heater up. Just built it up with some stuff I had around here. So here it is pulled out, because I removed those straps. The top half of the insulation can come off, you see that? And now you can see the back of the water heater. And inside you've got, there's the electrical connection I removed. This other black plastic line here is, I believe, the AC connection for the electric portion of the water heater. That's what that is. This connector down here would be the DC voltage to just operate the water heater. And then that wire's not associated with the water heater, or at least it doesn't connect to it. And then down there you've got your gas connection. Let's see if we can't see this from a different angle a little better. So from over here, you can see the electrical connection. And there's the black lines I disconnected. So now I should be able to pull this water heater completely free, except for the AC connection. So I turned it up on its face so that I could get a better look at this connection. And it looks like I've got an AC connection that I've got to get rid of. Oh look, interesting. Here's an on-off switch to probably to the whole damn thing. So it looks like what I need to do is take this cover plate off, and then I can disconnect the AC connection. So I took off these two bolts so that you could open this up, and sure enough, it's just an ordinary Romex style connection that I need to undo. Looks like a couple of thermostats. And boy, when you're putting it back in, don't forget to make sure this switch is on. Because if you flip it off, you're going to be taking the whole damn thing out again. Anyhow, so this connector here obviously just fell out of position, but it should have been like this. That's the way it was when it was installed. That's just a connector holder there. But I'm gonna disconnect these wire nuts under here. So I've got a black on black right here. I've got a ground. There is a ground, interesting. And I've got a white on white. So these connections match color-wise. So I took off the bottom insulation, and you can clearly see why I couldn't get this line off, because it's pulled way down over the pipe. That's going to be very hard to break free. And the same thing was going on this side. Look at how far down that line was pulled over the pipe. And here you can see where my leak was. I don't know that 100%, but I'm pretty sure that's it, because that pipe broke when I barely touched it. So I think it had a hairline crack in it, and that's where my leak was. So I'm gonna replace that, hook everything back up, and pressure test it. And when I do that, I don't have to put the water heater completely in. I just need to tuck it in enough, have all the lines connected so that I can pressurize it. I don't need to hook up the gas. I just need to fill it with water and pressurize it. Okay, at this point I've removed the broken fitting from here. I've removed these rubber lines. And so at this point, I'm gonna go shopping and get what I need to put this thing back together. And in preparation for my work, I'm gonna clean this out. It's got coolant on the base of it and a lot of filth. I'm gonna clean that whole bay out. Okay, I'm under the RV, and I just wanna show you these lines. So there's my front steering tire, and here's my stabilizer or leveler system right there. So I'm looking up here in the wheel well. Here's a mud flap. This is right up against where the water heater is. And here you can see where they have sealed up with foam those radiator pipes. So the two on the right of your screen go into the heater core for the floor coach heater. And then the one pipe that comes out of that heater core and loops towards the left and back in is the feed to the water heater. And then you have the return line to the engine. So that heater core, I need to repair it at the same time. And unless this foam breaks out, let's see how easy this foam is. I'm tearing at it. Pretty easy. Yeah, it looks like I'm able to break it free. These lines. Let's see what it looks like right now. Okay, so there's clamps. You can see it's got clamps on it on the outside. Okay, at this point, I've already removed the coach heater. So this is a reenactment, basically, to show you what I did, because it was way too difficult during the process. So let me just show you kind of how I set the RV up. So I put the RV as low as it would go on the back, and chalked the wheels. Then I put the RV as high as I could get it on the front, more or less. You can see I put some blocks down there to give me a couple of extra inches on the front of the RV. Then I turn the steering wheel all the way to the left to give me the most maneuvering room behind the wheel, because you've got to get under there behind the wheel. The reason I did this is because of my body size. Reaching the pipes I'm about to show you was easiest if I could sit Indian style on the ground and reach up. I couldn't do it laying down under the RV. I couldn't get enough reach to manipulate everything, and you'll see why in just a minute. So it's very frustrating because Winnebago did not think about access at all in getting at this. Now, you pretty much have to pull the hot water heater. I pulled it because it was leaking, so I needed to pull it anyhow to make a repair to it. But I would have had to have pulled it to get at that floor heater unit back there. All right, so here I am under the RV, just behind the passenger wheel. And there's a mud flap here, and I had to get that up out of the way. Now, okay, there's a series of hot water lines up in here that's bringing engine coolant, hot engine coolant, back here. First, it goes through the floor heater, which is the connection here, those two copper lines. But then it loops, so it goes through the heater bay, the heater core, comes back out and connects to this pipe here, which then takes it over to the hot water heater, runs hot water through the hot water heater, and then the pipe comes out right here and goes back to the engine. So this pipe brings it from the engine right here, brings it into the heater core, then it comes out of the heater core to this pipe and loops back into the water heater, then comes out of the water heater and goes back to the engine. Now, it was impossible to get these pipes to come apart. And there is not enough play in this line in particular. It goes to the engine, but it's straight to the heater core, no play whatsoever, which basically meant it was impossible to pull the heater core out to get enough manipulation so that I could remove the pipe. So my only option was to cut the pipes. So I did. I cut this pipe and I cut this pipe. I cut the two pipes that went to the heater core. They're not there. The stubs aren't there because I've already pulled this thing out. This is a reenactment for you guys, but I cut those pipes. Now, the next step is not easy. There's a grommet that was around here. You basically, to get this out, you've got to pull, if possible, the hose clamps that are holding the pipes on here, because they interfere with getting this assembly out through that hole. You can see a circular hole that the pipes come out of. You got to remove as much as you can here. Now, I could only get out, it was very difficult. I could only get out one hose clamp, and I think I used my knife and I cut one of the pipes out. But one hose clamp and one section of pipe stayed there, and there was nothing I could do about it. Okay, so now I've disconnected it on this side. So now we come in here. Now, this is really frustrating. There is an electrical power plug that is on, and I'll show it when I pull the box out. But it is completely out of reach. It is in the back corner of this box. And let's see if I can even get a little video of it. If I turn the camera sideways, there you can see it. That plug has no play in it at all, and it prevents this box from moving at all. So it's very frustrating. I don't think this job should be for anybody who isn't really into doing these kind of repairs because you're going to get very frustrated doing it. What I basically did was, once I had disconnected those radiator hoses, I had to work it and work it and work it until I got this box. It was hard. In fact, it's hard right now. Basically, I got this box that far out. So you can see that the copper lines are just inside the cavity. And I could barely see that wire back there. And I reached back there, and I'll demonstrate it later, but basically you pinch that white wire. You can see the little pinch. There's two latches, one close to you there in the image and one on the far side. So you have to pinch both sides of it at the same time, and then it will unplug. And you need somebody with a small arm and a small hand, but I managed. And once that wire was unplugged, then boom, this thing came loose. And finally, I was able to manipulate it and get it loose. Now you have to bring it out this way because, as you can see, there's some PVC lines on the ceiling over there. You don't want to be moving your lines around because you might break something. So you really want to take it out in the direction that is the easiest, which is through the hot water heater cavity. So, and then by the way, here's my rubber hose lines from the hot water heater for the circulation of engine coolant that I cut. And I'm going to have to, now all of this, when I put it back together, I'm going to make it easier to take out the next time, should I ever have to do it again, or should anybody have to do it again. But let me get this thing out of here and then discuss the unit. So here I finally got this thing out. And there's the unit. So now you can see the cavity where it belongs. There's the vent where it blows the hot air into the cab or the coach area. You can see the wire, the power wire up there. And you can see the hole where you feed the heater core out to the engine coolant lines. All right, let's look at this thing now. All right, the little black screws are the ones holding the fan in place. I'm gonna pull them out now. All right, here I've got the motor out. So this is the power supply that came out of the top of the box right here. That's really hard to get at. That's the last thing I had to unhook to get this box out. This goes to the high-low thermostat, which I have to replace also, which is right here. So this is your heater coil, which was in the back of this box here. And right there is the thermostat assembly, the high-low thermostat assembly, which I am going to replace. And that plugs in to that plug right there. And that's it. That's your whole, as far as electricity goes, that's your whole setup. Believe it or not, that blower, all the air comes out of that little teeny hole. And the blower's right here. So I've already taken the blower out. That's the piece that's broken that I've got to replace. But I believe that my thermostat is also broken. And if you look, yeah, you can't see it behind this plate. I'm going to take it off in a minute and I'll show you guys. But there's a high-low thermostat that I need to replace that's hidden down in here. But here's the fan assembly. This is the end that plugged in to that impossible to get at plug. And I got to think about how I'm going to make that easier next time around. I'm not sure yet. That was really a pain. And then here on this wiring harness is the plug that goes into the thermostat. So I'm going to worry about either replacing or rebuilding this motor. It might be able to be, I've had offers to buy a new one. I've had offers to repair it. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. But I should put it in the video when I'm done, whatever I decide to do. Now, let me just show you on this box. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all this together and insert the whole thing as one piece when I'm ready. Let's see here. Where is my... All right, I just kind of quickly reassembled this, so I got only one screw to remove so you guys can see what's going on inside the darn thing. Now you can see the coil, and there is the thermostat assembly that I need to replace, and you can see what it looks like on the inside. And that's not working because when I used to flip my button, it was only high would work, low would never work, and the fan motor was vibrating out of control. So the bearings are bad on the fan motor, and I only have high coming out of my thermostat. So I'm going to take this off. This is like $25 or $30. This is easy to find, this piece right here. The motor is a little bit harder. And shifting gears on the hot water heater, because this is kind of two projects in one video. Best I can tell, there's nothing wrong with my hot water heater. The problem was that I had a broken 90-degree fitting, and that is right there is the broken 90-degree fitting, and I found a replacement. It's called a 1/2 MPF, I think it was called. 1/2 inch, a 90-degree elbow, PVC 90-degree elbow, 1/2 MPF, I think. I'll correct that here if I'm saying it wrong. MIP or something like that. But I found it. I got a picture of it, which I'll include in the video if anybody needs to get that. But I went to Home Depot. Forget it. Everything for PVC for RVs are PEX, I should say. PEX for RVs is unique. You're not going to find it at Home Depot. Home Depot doesn't deal with any of that. None of the brass will be quite right. I did find brass, but you'll find it, but then what it won't have is the compression in. See, that's a compression fitting there. The seal goes up against that little curved inside there, and you won't get that with brass. It'll just be straight going down into, and it won't work. It won't connect properly to your PEX lines. So I found that, and I bought 3. Every time I get anything for this RV like that, I buy 3 at a time. So I always have one. Anyhow, that's where we're at right now. So now next step is get my motor and get my thermostat. And also while we're at it, I might as well show you how do I plan on putting all of this back together? Now that I did use Home Depot for. The way I'm going to put, and if I have to drive the RV, because one thing you should keep in mind, you cannot drive the RV with your coolant lines wide open like this. So if I have to drive the RV, I mean, this is how I'm going to do my final correction or seal up on all of this, but if I get into a bind and I got to do something quick, I got these, what is this? This is 3/4 by 3/4 brass coupling. And it does require a hose clamp, but there it is. Now I'm going to use that where I have to splice the cuts that I made in this thing. But also if I have to drive the RV, all you have to do is make it a closed loop. So you just take this brass fitting. So just like that, just set that up. Put that in here so that you have a closed loop. Seal that up, and then you can drive the thing. And of course you're going to have to do it underneath the RV too. If you do exactly what I did and you've cut the pipe in both places, you're going to have to splice both places so that you still have a continuous loop for the engine coolant. And you're going to want to do that before you ever start the thing. So I won't even start the RV. If you start it, the water pump's just going to start to blow your coolant out these lines. So you can't start the RV while you're in the middle of this. All right, here's what I did so that I could temporarily drive the RV. So here you can see I just connected the two pipes that went into the coach heater coil. I just put them in a loop, put a coupling between them, and fastened them. And then I did the exact same thing in here for the loop that goes to the hot water heater. Bound it up. So now, if I must, at a moment's notice, I can start the engine and take the RV for a spin, because it's probably going to take 1 to 2 weeks for me to get the parts I need to put this all back together.